Good morning. You're really welcome. Thanks for joining me. Hope your day is going well so far, and I hope this supports you in moving into an even better day. So to begin our practice this morning, we're going to do some breath work, and I'm going to ask you to come down onto your back. Get comfortable on your back. You can have the legs bent or straight. And as you get onto your back, let the attention notice your breath without changing it initially, without moving it. Just let the breath move through you as it normally does and notice it. Be aware of it. It's almost as if the breath is a place, it's something that's happening in every moment. And it's this invitation for us to move toward this place. And what it represents for us is this really natural aspect of our nature. Everything breathes. This is the way life articulates itself in this realm. And what we're trying to do through our practice is move back into that more natural state. That our tendency, is to get a little stuck, a little discombobulated, a little split within ourselves. That we get pulled off in these different directions, that this kind of mind, sympathetic nervous system, protective mechanism that's so overly active in the Western world, in our modern society, just creates so much noise, so much distraction, so much moving faster than we're designed to move. That these practices are an invitation to come back to that deeper rhythm. To come back home to ourselves. We see this, and most of us probably experience it day in, day out in our lives. It can be such a fragile experience being a human being. It can be so easily challenging for us. Suffering is such an intrinsic part of this experience of embodiment. So there is an invitation to kind of begin to use the mind as a way of discerning, well, look, does this path work for me? And when we try, certainly in my own life, walking down paths that I've wanted to go down, but yet continually create suffering for me, at some point I've got to go, okay, that doesn't work as much as I'd like to do that. And begin to look at the ways in which, or the actions or the alignments that really support me in finding a greater sense of ease or a greater sense of peace in my life. And the same works for all of us. This is the beautiful potential of our mind to be discerning as to what works and what doesn't work for us. And then to activate the will to begin to align to those ways of moving through the world that do begin to diminish suffering and support a greater sense of freedom or a greater sense of ease. And it's difficult because quite often, the part of us that is in that protective, trying to keep safe, that ego aspect, which is insatiable, that part of us that will never be enough, will never feel good enough, will never feel lovable. There is that aspect to the ego that each of us carries. It's just part of being a human being. It's, in a sense, it's the price of having this individual, this human experience. And yet, if we can begin to find ways that allow us to tune in to the eternal aspect of us. And I know sometimes this sounds like words that are, not anchored, and yet as you begin to go deeper and do this work, what you begin to realize and experience is that these words are very anchored. That our rational experience becomes so dominant that it's willing to throw out a lot of what it can't understand. And ultimately, each of us is moving in the direction of awakening to a part of ourselves that the rational mind cannot do. It just has no capacity to go there. Rational mind is about decisions, problem solving, working stuff out. When it's out of balance, and for all of us to some extent it is, you think about the noise that goes through your head, the nonsense that goes through your head. on a regular basis, that's really telling us about where this rational, ego, mind-based experience has really started to take the reins and try to run the show. Our practice is coming back to something deeper, to begin to see, explore, can that deeper place be experienced? Can it be felt? Can we move into that space? And then can that space begin to inform our lives more and more and more? That's what the whole practice is about. That's the invitation of the practice. Now, no matter where you are in that spectrum, it's perfect, because this is what the human experience is all about, exploring. There is a process of concealment and revelation at play. Coming into this experience of being a human being means that you have ego, means that you have that aspect, sometimes we refer to it as karma, the idea that there's just work to do. There's cloaking, there's covering, there's not knowing, there's all of that. And part of what we do in this human experience is we play stuff out. And we don't have to look very far into the world to see that that's the truth. All of the suffering, all of the pain, all of the ways in which the unregulated psyche creates suffering in the world, in individual lives and in our world as a whole. We see it in Israel, we see it all over the place. So this is our opportunity to begin to explore these aspects of what it is to be a human being within ourselves, so that then becomes an invitation not only for a shift in our own lives, but it becomes a foundation for a shift in the world. Because although we experience ourselves as individuals, we are part of a collective. We are part of something bigger. So often our experience gets limited to this idea of this physical form, finite, separate. And yet this is just one little part of what it is to be a human being. What we get to see with the visible, with the eyes. That there is this whole other pulsating, moving, interwoven experience. And again, the more we practice in these ways, and it can be a formal practice like this, it can be going out into nature, the more we include ways in which we can begin to attune back to that deeper quality, that deeper aligned space within us. We call it home, we call it natural state of being. The more we sensitize ourselves to these deeper realms, these deeper movements within us, we awaken to something deeper. And it's that place then that begins to bubble up and inform more and more of our lives, more and more of our day-to-day. And it's also then the part that gets to hold the insatiable place, the ego place, the never enough place, the discontent place, the judgment place, the noisy place. Because the noisy place, it needs to be held in a way that is loving, because it arose and was created from moments in our lives in which that loving wasn't present. And again, that's all perfect, and that's what each of us in a sense is called in to actually grow in ways that we need to grow and experience in ways that we need to experience. And this is again what the human endeavor is all about. The human life from A to birth to grave is all about. It's about experiencing and moving through and recognizing and seeing and falling down and getting up and playing it out and giving ourselves permission to do that. And when we create suffering, hopefully at some point recognizing that we're doing that and making a decision to not do that. And again, being human, and when we do fall down again, that's okay. But all of this is an invitation to recognize that we are lovable, that we are full, that we are complete. And there's one part of us that isn't able to see that, and there's another part that is. And the practice of yoga is to yoke or align to or connect to that part, often hidden, often locked away and protected, that part that recognizes that we are full. And the more we turn toward that place, the more we attune to that place, the easier it gets for us to be able to meet the discontent parts the wounded parts and hold them in the ways that they were never held. So we get to hold that wounded space. And as we learn to do that, watch how it changes. Watch how it shifts. So we're on our backs. Okay. We're going to breathe in through our nose, out through our mouth. In through our nose, out through our mouth. What we're going to do is 10 deep breaths. 10 deep inhalations, where you breathe in fully. Now, as you're breathing in, I want you to really work or move the abdomen, move the diaphragm. Full, long, deep inhalation, full, long exhalation. Let's just do it that way to begin. Okay, 10 breaths. Push all the air out. And then you just come back to the natural breath and just be still. Just notice. Observe. Okay, second round. Now this time, at the end of your 10th exhalation, no air in the body, you pause without inhaling. You just pause. Now, the trick is when we pause and we're not breathing, nervous system tends to get a little freaked out. So you're really trying to focus on softening, being receptive as you pause. Whenever you need to breathe, you just breathe. No big deal. Just come back to the breath. Yeah. So 10 of those deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Keep going. You're doing good. When you get to the end of the 10th exhalation, you just pause without inhaling. Now, you might have pins and needles, you might feel lightheaded, all of that's appropriate. You're changing the CO2 oxygen levels in the body. So that's going to affect you. Perfect. Just to stay with whatever's there. Rest. Rest. Relax where you are. When you need to breathe, come back to the breath. So with this work, particularly when we're doing these breaths that are a bit challenging, and again, it's working with oxygen, CO2 in the body, in the cells, and beginning to shift the ratios. Part of what happens through the experience is the sympathetic nervous system gets activated, that protective mechanism gets activated. But it's getting activated under different circumstances than it usually does. Usually we need to be, in a place of some sense of danger. Now, quite often our nervous system is primed in such a way that it creates the danger. The nervous system gets hooked up with the ego. It gets into this this self-fulfilling prophecy kind of idea in which it's actually designed to activate when we are in danger, and yet it'll keep doing that to keep perpetuating itself, to keep us stuck in a bit of a loop. We're shifting that loop. We're beginning to change the way in which it activates. And what begins to happen is our parasympathetic, that part of the nervous system that's all around freedom, essentially, creativity, being in the world, possibility, all of those higher, richer feelings that we long to experience begin to become more accessible. So let's do another round. Same idea, 10 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. At the end of the 10th exhalation, we'll pause without inhaling. Now, this time, when you feel the urge to breathe, I want you just even for a moment to explore softening there. Just, what tends to come up when we need to breathe, it's almost a sense of panic. Can you use the mind here just to soften for a moment? And when you really do need to breathe, absolutely take a breath, breathe, come back to your breath. But just see, can you, as the urge to breathe comes up, can something in you invite the body to soften for a moment or 2 moments? Just to play that edge a little bit, okay? So 10 deep breaths. Again, can you soften wherever you are? And again, when you come back to the natural breath, just rest in that space. So we're beginning to really play with these patterns that often get very rigid with us. This triggers us, this triggers us, this triggers us. We're beginning to shift and change those patterns, to work with shifting those patterns. And actually, the mechanism that often locks us into these patterns is the key to begin to soften and change them. We're using the mind to begin to explore a different way of responding to the reactions of the nervous system. So even though we get into these places in which we feel a little uncomfortable, we're, part of it is knowing that we're in this space, we're safe, we're practicing. Can we soften? Can we soften? And it might be a microsecond, and it's enough to begin to shift patterns. Okay, we're going to do one more round. 10 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. At the end of the 10th exhalation, all the air has left the body. We are pausing. We're exploring softening the body, letting it drop, letting it drop, letting it drop, letting it drop. When the urge to breathe arises initially, even more focus on softening. Soften, soften. And when you get to the point, okay, I really have to take a breath. You take a deep breath this time and you hold that breath for about 10 seconds. Yeah? So when you do finally need to breathe, you take a deep breath, you hold that breath for about 10 seconds, and then we come back to the natural breath. Yeah? Let's give it a shot. 10 breaths. Soften, soften, soften wherever you are. Again, when you need to breathe, you're taking that deep breath, you're holding for about 10 seconds. And you come back, and when you come back to the natural breath, just again observe, just notice. The truth about, who we think we are, these personalities, who we identify with, is these aspects of us are transient. The ways in which we get triggered or activated, become happy, become sad, they're all shifting all the time. They're changing all the time. And if we go and repeat a thing enough, or if it's big enough when it initially happens, it calcifies and gets stuck in our system. And that calcification prevents us from experiencing ourselves in deeper and deeper ways, because of course, this transient quality to being a human being creates this kind of secular, or this spiral into our depth, into deeper and deeper experiences of ourselves. But if it gets stuck, it's like we hit an eternal wall that we a lot of people just don't get through, and that then becomes the experience of life and the world. And for most people, particularly in the West, or a lot of people in the West, that wall really gets strongly determined by the sympathetic nervous system experience. And we see it in the media, we see it all around us in the world, how it's the fear that really begins to tell us how the world is. And yet there is this richer experience waiting for each of us if we can begin to soften that internal experience, if we can begin to become more receptive. This is what we're interested in. Now, bend the two knees. So we're on the floor, bend the two knees. Take your left leg all the way over your right leg, thigh over thigh. Move your hips a little to the left, even the feet can move a little to the left. And we're going to drop the two legs toward the right. If it's too much of a stretch, you pad the legs. You put something underneath them to support them. Game is, I want you to be relatively comfortable. We're going into a twist. Breathe into whatever tension you notice in the body. Wherever you notice it, maybe it's the lower back or the hips, breathe into it. Just give the body time. Same ideas, same principles. What you're doing is you're becoming aware, connecting into the rigidity, the stuckness in the body, and then we're giving it time to unravel. Because of course, life is designed to be fluid. That's the quality that we're designed to experience more of in the body, or capable of experiencing. So just breathe into what you're meeting, give it time. Soften. So use the mind to really promote ease. That's it, soften. Let it release, let it release. Mind is often in a rush, wants results now. Always focused on getting to that point B. And really the magic is in being wherever you are. This is where the nervous system actually begins to find more ease. When we let ourselves be wherever we are, even if it's in tension. A few more breaths here. Okay, left leg, I want you to extend it outward toward the right, even point the toes, and then bend the knee and extend the leg and bend the knee. And we just pulse a little like this. Bend and extend.
So the leg might be horizontal, it might be pointing up toward the sky a little, it doesn't matter, wherever you are. And then extend the leg, point the toes. And we'll bring it back, all the way back. Come back through center. For a moment, the 2 feet on the floor, just feel, notice the difference in the two sides. This is again a great way of teaching the mind that things are shifting and changing. You'll feel that left side might feel like it's dropped a little, might feel a little bit lighter. Two legs together, take the right over the left. We move the hips toward the right, and then we're going to drop the legs over toward the left. Quite often the two sides may feel different. Feel free to adjust in whatever way works for you. And then come to the breath and infuse the holding in your body, the tightness, with the breath. And then extend the right leg over toward the left. Stretch it out, point the toes. And then bend and extend that right leg. And then extend the leg, point the toes. Perfect, and then come on back, all the way back, 2 feet on the floor. Hips back to center. Feet are about hip distance apart on the floor. What I'd like you to try to do now is to press your bum into the floor in such a way that the arch in the lower back begins to actually get deeper, meaning the lower back is lifting up as the bum is pressing down. Now, quite often our lower backs tend to be overworkers. So if you go too far with this, you might get some pain there. Don't go that far. But I want you to press the bum down. Now, as you press the bum down, and this is one of the big qualities of the pelvis, it's designed to anchor us. It's a root. And when it works and aligns in a particular way, it creates opening communication through the body, through the nervous system. So what you're doing here is you're sending your thigh bones backwards in your hip socket. Most of us don't do this enough in our day-to-day alignment. In fact, the opposite tends to happen. So the arch in the lower back deepens. The lower back is designed to be in an arch. Of course, it can go too deep or too shallow. So we're trying to find a balanced place. You got to use your mind, and pain is a great way, or discomfort is a great way of informing us, oh, I've gone too far. So you just explore what's available. Now, I want you to keep the pelvis there, keep the lower back in that position. I want you to now press the back of the head down. Notice as you press the back of the head down, the back of the shoulders might get a little lighter. That's fine. Keep a steady engagement of the head pushing down, but then slowly begin to tilt your chin away from your chest to the point at which the front of your throat feels open or a little longer than normal. So the bum is pressing down, back of the head pressing down. We're just going to sustain this for a few rounds of breath. Breathe. So the two places that we're creating curvature now in the spine, or supporting curvature, is what we call the secondary curves of the lumbar, lower back, cervical, the neck. These tend to be two of the weaker spots. And then let it all soften. Let it all soften. Great. Okay. Arms go up. Wrap the arms around you. Hug yourself. Now, try to get the hands onto the ribs rather than holding the arms. So whatever way you can get onto your rib cage. Close your eyes. Let everything else soften. And begin to take some deeper breaths. So you're breathing into the hands. You're just feeling the movement of the ribs as you breathe through the sensitivity of your hands. Your hands get to feel more easily. Long, deep, steady breath. If you can breathe through your nose, do that. Now stay with that, stay with the breath. Stay with those deeper breaths. And notice what happens when you take a deep breath, you feel an expansion. You can feel the ribs widen, you'll feel it against the floor, the back that's on the floor. There's this quality of filling up. Now, this works into the nervous system, it works into the ideas or the beliefs that activate, maintain, structure the nervous system in terms of its response mechanisms. Sympathetic nervous system is all around fear. It's all around protection. So one of the underlying principles of the nervous system is I'm not enough. I'm not safe. It's not okay. And what that does in the physical body is it creates contraction. Now, if that nervous system, that part of the nervous system is running the show, it's going to maintain that contraction more of the time than your physical body is designed to hold contraction. Your physical body, again, is a fluid system. It's designed to contract and expand and contract and expand, like the beat of your heart. So that pulsation allows us to maintain a healthy system. When we're overly contracted, we have all kinds of issues arise from that. If that perpetuates for a long time, then things just stop working the way they're designed to. So a lot of what we focus on is this quality of expansion in order to balance the contraction-expansion relationship. So as you're breathing into the ribs, really feel what it's like to have the whole thing expand. Think of the ribs like a cylinder or a balloon and the whole thing fills up. Okay? Okay, and then let it relax and release the two arms again. Okay. So we're back in this position again. Press the bum down so the arch in the lower back gets to deepen. Again, don't force. Obviously, this effort required. Press the back of the head down to the floor. Begin to tilt the chin away from the chest till you get to the point where you feel the arch in the lower, or the length of the front of the throat a little longer. Now, take the two hands, just palpate the back of the neck, just feel it. Let the head relax, feel the difference. Engage and press the head down again, feel the difference. So you're engaging all that muscle, either side of the vertebrae. This is good. I want us to keep the hands here so the fingers are touching at the back of the neck and the elbows are pointing up toward the sky. Even pull the elbows in toward each other so you feel the back broaden. Now, take some deep breaths into the ribs again. What did it feel like to be full in the ribs? Can you breathe in so much? You're pressing the bum down, you're pressing the head down. You actually even float the shoulders a little. The back is even floating a little if you can. Breathe 5. Front of the throat open. 4. Breathe 3. Breathe 2. Breathe 1. And then relax. Let it all drop. Okay, perfect. Let's roll over onto our backs. Or, excuse me, onto all fours. So come on onto all fours. Hands and knees. First thing I want you to do, let the hips sway. Close the eyes. If your wrists are sore, you can come onto the forearms. Nice and simple. Belly, lower back, relaxing. So that arch we were creating by pressing the bum into the floor in the last position we can create it actually by just softening in the belly and lower back. Creates the same alignment. Now again, the tendency as you soften in some of these spaces is you're going to reveal some holding or tightness or discomfort or pain. Quite often muscle again engages and contracts, and it's been doing it for so long that things are slightly misaligned and then pain gets covered up. So we want to reveal what's here, but again, I don't want you to force a strain.
As you continue to let the lower back soften, those deeper breaths we were taking into the ribs, can we take them again? But in this position, I want you to focus the breath toward the bottom back ribs. And notice as you're breathing into that space and it's expanding, how the lower back might get a little bit more comfortable. Can you bring a little gentle shrugging through the shoulders? So as the hips sway, the shoulders are shrugging. If you're on the hands, the tendency is the weight drops into your wrists. Spread your fingers, have a gripping action with the fingers, so you're intentionally spreading the weight through the whole of the hands. Many of you will notice your head is dropped down rather than lifting your head up, because the head tends to want to go off and do its own thing. I want you to lift your neck up. Press your neck toward the sky. Open the front of the throat. Same alignment we had on our back a moment ago. Perfect. Now, without changing anything, could the hands, without moving, pull toward your knees, like you're trying to drag your hands backwards? Now, this might engage the lower back a little bit more. So again, you've got to balance this. Can you breathe into any of the discomfort that might be there? So every step of the way, we've got to readdress, notice what's going on. Do we need to engage a little bit more, create a little bit more space? We're learning the language of our body. The curvature of the spine is so important for a healthy, open, strong experience in the body. Without moving now, push your two knees apart, without moving. Notice that widening in the glutes. And as you feel that widening in the glutes, can you stick the bum up a little bit more? Could you even deepen the arch in the lower back a little bit more? And again, if it's sore, don't go there. Breathe into the lower back to readdress, to rebalance. Now from here, I want the hands to push down into the floor so you feel the shoulder blades broaden, the widening of the back like we worked with earlier. We're going to try to stay broad in the back, keep the legs active, keep the hips stable, walk the arms toward the left. Just begin to slowly, just one hand then the other. So we're arcing to the left. So the whole right side now begins to stretch and open. Now, again, if you go too far, things might spasm. These are working into areas we're not used to working into. Be sensitive. It's not about how far you can get, but really being present each step of the way and being wise enough to know, okay, this is far enough. Yeah. So the tricky bit is the mind is always never enough, got to go further. But if you listen to the sensitivity of the body, it will tell you, yeah, here is enough for you for now. And can you be humble enough to pause there, breathe. Breathe into the tension you're connecting into and meeting. Take your time. Breathe into it. Inhale and exhale. You just give it time. And the body will do what it's designed to do. It'll begin to give you an opening, to become softer, to become more fluid. Perfect. Come back to center. As you come back to center, just take a few moments just to sway and shrug. And it's like you want to release any residual tension. So again, this idea of the sympathetic nervous system, this contractive process in the body is so dominant that, it'll tend to hold, even as we're doing this work. It's inclination, it's pattern, it's habit. So you just sway a little, shrug a little with this idea of just let go, just soften, breathe, move. And then as you stabilize without moving, push the knees apart, feel that in the pelvis, feel the arch in the lower back, breathe into the back ribs, lift the neck, open the throat. So move into the curvature of your spine and then walk your arms in the other direction toward the right. Feel, don't rush there. Take your time. Your body will thank you. Breathe. Perfect. Breathe into what you're meeting. Inhaling and exhaling. few more breaths here. Perfect. And then we're going to come back through center. Again, as we come back, we just sway and we shrug. Nice and simple. Let's come down onto the forearms, interlace the fingers. We're going to keep the elbows shoulder distance apart, but we're going to slide the knees back an inch or two. And as you do that, same idea in terms of tuning into the back, the alignment that we want to cultivate in the back. Lower back then relaxes, belly softens. For many of us, this is could almost feel unsafe in that our belly, our abdomen tends to be a huge overworker, tends to over tighten. It's a very protective mechanism. Part of this is the idea of the solar plexus. In terms of the energetic body, the solar plexus is where we hold our idea of self. And if a lot of us don't feel okay in that or have trouble with that idea of self, that we feel, unworthy, whatever our little story is, the belly tightens, it holds, the diaphragm tightens. We want to open the space up. And it means going into places that feel a little uncomfortable, feel a little vulnerable. So you just let the belly soften. You let the belly relax, let the hips sway. Again, if it reveals any sharpness in terms of the body or tension, you try to breathe into that. Try to create and bring expansion and ease into those spaces. Breathe. Okay, press the elbows down. I want you to feel a sense of lifting through the back, through the neck, broadening of the shoulder blades. So very stabilized in the upper back. Breathe into it. Think of the shoulder blades, collarbone, wide, 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 wide. Now, can we tuck the toes under? And if this is too much, just stay where you are. Lift the hips, lift the knees. Walk the feet a little closer to your arms, but a little further away from each other. Grip with the toes. Now, don't drop the head down. Grip with the toes. Try to activate the toes. You've got the knees bent. Can you still stick the bum up? Can you still maintain or find an arch in the lower back as best you can? The toes are gripping. Stretch the legs straighter and bend the knees a little. And just pulse this action in the legs. Take your time. Breathe. Breathe. For 5, for 4, for 3, 2, 1. And then bring the knees back to the floor. Release the hands. Separate the elbows, place one hand on top of the other, flat on top of the other. We're going to bring the forehead down. We're going to rest in this position, elbows wide, hips stay high, lower back relaxed. Come back to the breath. Just notice the breath. Notice the breath. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And then slowly come on up and come right up onto your knees. Come right up onto the knees. Okay. And take the hands either side of the ribs, fingers forward, thumbs at the back. We're holding the lower ribs. Close your eyes. Similar to what we've done already in terms of moving the rib cage, expanding the ribs. So you're breathing out into the hands. And you're feeling not just the front, the sides, but also the back of the ribs moving, all as one piece. The inhalation expanding everything, exhalation, it gets to soften and contract. And as you fill the ribs up and they press out into the hands, can you lift them up, even just waddling the rib cage? So you notice a stretch around the belly, sides of the waist, lower back area. It creates decompression, not just for the lower back, but also for the thoracic spine. Shoulders lift, that creates a lightening and an ease for the neck, the jaw. We're going to arc over to one side. So we did this on our hands and our knees, similar action, just breathing into wherever the tightness is. It might be mainly through the stretched side, the lengthened side. It might also be in that contracted waist. Come back through center, fill it all up again, lift it all up, wait for the breath, take your time, second side. Breathe here, keep breathing. And come back through center, it's all full again. We go over to the first side. You might have a little bit more movement each time you go in. And come back through center. Big breath, fill, we go to the second side. Breathing into the tightness. Perfect. We'll come on back. Release the two arms. Okay, let's take the left leg forward. Keep the left hand up there. Bring the right hand down to the floor. Slide it over to the right. Now, before you drop all the weight into the hand, grip with the fingers, press through the base of the fingers, and then anchor the heel of the hand down. The crease of the elbow lines up with your thumb rather than its tendency to want to turn forward and you see that shoulder drops forward. So a lot of us are in some version of that position with the shoulder a lot of the time, and that'll really begin to create issues with the shoulder and with the neck and with the jaw. So we're opening the shoulder girdle. What you might feel is the shoulder blade press a little bit more firmly into the rib cage as you're doing that. And then what you do is you take that deep breath and expand the ribs again. Now, a way of feeling that is to bring that free hand onto the ribs. And then we're going to begin to push the bottom hand down. So again, we're opening up this top side of the rib cage, just exploring what's available. When you get to where you get to, you just pause and you breathe. Couple more breaths here. And then just softening here, we're going to reach down with the left hand, hook the big toe. So the index finger and the middle finger, they hook the big toe. We're going to see, can we lean back? So can you lean over to the right hand, lean over to the right leg, and possibly lift the left foot. Now, if it's too much and you can't lift, you're just building a resistance and sustaining that. If you're lifting the foot, then you're extending the foot out. You're stretching out through the foot. Breathe into what you're feeling into. And if possible, as the foot extends forward, the idea of sticking the bum out, that work that we were already doing with the hips, setting the femur deeper into the hip socket. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll release that, step it all the way back. Come up, second side, right leg forward, right hand stays up, left comes down. Remember the way in which we connect the hand to the floor. So the whole thing works, every part of it we're trying to get working as a team, as a system. So we're not relying on certain parts to do most of the work. Hand to the ribs, breathing into the ribs, pressing the hands down, opening the top ribs up, enjoying again what you're connecting into, breathing into it. Take your time. Okay, so we're going to reach down. Going to hook the toe. Again, if the foot doesn't look above the floor, no big deal. You just build a resistance between the arm and the leg. Alternatively, you lean over to that left side so you can lift the foot. Toe has a gripping action in it. So the toe is active. It's not just dropping back. Toe is active. And then you're extending through the leg. And at the same time as you extend forward through the leg, can you extend back through the hip? Try to feel into that. Breathe. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're going to take this leg back. We're going to go all the way over to the first side again. Left leg forward, right hand down.
Now you'll notice the tendency for the front of the body to turn toward the floor. I want you to turn toward the front leg, like you try to stack one shoulder on top of the other shoulder. I'm going to take the left hand to the crown of my head. So the center of my palm is right over the crown of the head, and the elbow is almost in front of my nose. I can feel the fingertips kind of just around the back of the skull. My head I try to bring to neutral, meaning my nose stays in line with my navel. I'm not twisting it or turning it or dropping it. Head is neutral. Now, I fill the ribs up, all that work we've done already. I press the head back into the fingers, build a little resistance as if that top left elbow is trying to stretch forward. And then I'm tilting my left elbow toward the right, and you'll feel it all the way down to the left hip. Breathe. You go to whatever feels available and sustainable, and you're breathing. Long, deep, steady breath. Now the front of the body, the neck and the head, like one piece of metal, turn a little bit toward the sky, whatever feels available. Watch the head's inclination to go off on its own. And then breathe. Now, if you want to go a little further, and feel free just to stay here, we're going to pulse. So I'm going to sit my bum back a little. I'm going to pulse forward. The elbow extends over to the right. I sit the bum back. That's it. For 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then that left arm stretches over to the right. Breathe, and then release. Okay, we come up, second side. Take your time. We'll take the hand to the crown of the head. Head neutral. Quite often the head, in terms of relating or connecting or aligning with the rest of the body, tends to be a little weak at knowing where to go. It's so used to being slightly out of alignment. Loses a sense of where it's designed to be. So we're trying to rebuild that. And that opens up pathways of communication, just allows muscle to become more integral. Okay, fill the ribs up. Bottom hand and arm strong and steady, head pressing back into the right fingers. Right elbow first stretches forward, and you'll feel that broadening the back of the right shoulder. And then the right elbow tilting toward the left. The head tilts back, and that creates a stretch from the right hip all the way through the length of the torso. Maybe we get to arc the top ribs a little bit more. Maybe we can turn a little bit toward the sky. You're just exploring what's available. And if you wish, you pulse. Hips back, elbow forward. That's it. Breathe. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 more. And then extend the arm, stretch out through the fingers, 3, 2, 1, and we release. We're going to release all the way back to hands and knees. And on hands and knees, let's just relax. Let the belly soften, let the hips sway. Breathe into the ribs. So initially, when we're opening the body up, the first thing we meet is resistance. The body's inclination to want to stay shut, to want to stay tight and contracted. And we're breathing through that. So that requires effort. And this is a lot of the reason why, people get stuck in habits of not doing this work, because initially it's uncomfortable. But even after what we've done so far, and you're breathing, you're going to begin to connect into more lightness. The tissue becomes more pliable, more elasticated. And then that makes or creates a quality of ease. In Sanskrit, we have this word laghima, lightness of being. So it's like it's uncovering this quality of lightness in our system. And then interestingly, the more lightness we feel, the more anchored we become. So it's how these kind of opposites work with each other. The lighter we become, the more rooted and grounded and present we become. One reason is because the body simply becomes a more comfortable place to inhabit. If our body is really restricted and tight and sore, part of us just doesn't want to be in it. So breathe, feel, very simple. Inhaling and exhaling. So from this hands and knees position, I'm going to tuck my toes under. I'm going to lift my 2 knees up. I'm going to walk the feet
a little bit closer to the arms, but wider apart again, almost as wide as my mat. Now I'm going to keep my neck over my wrists or in line with my wrists. I'm keeping the two hands really active, so I'm not dropping all my weight into the wrist. The fingers are gripping, base of the fingers are anchoring. I'm even going to bend the elbows a couple of inches to the sides of the room without moving. I'm going to pull my hands toward each other to amp it up a little, and then see, can I re-straighten the arms so much so that I get into that broadening between the shoulder blades, push the earth away. Two knees bent nice and wide. Can you find the arch in the lower back? Remember all the work we've done already. Bum sticks up a little. Breathe, breathe, take your time. If you can, the toes are gripping and you're pulsing the legs, stretching them a little straighter, bending them, trying to keep the arch in the back as you're moving the hips and moving the legs. That's it. If it's too much, you just take a break, no big deal. Okay, now stretch the legs to whatever they go to, wherever they go to. Swing the heels and hips over to the left. Come back through center, little pulse in the center, swing them in the other direction. And then come on back, two knees to the floor. We're going to come down onto the hands again. Elbows wide, rest the head, come back to the breath. That's it, just breathe. Stay with the breath, just an awareness of the breath. Very simple. Give the breath the time it needs just to relax. Okay, and then from there, come up onto the hands and knees. We're going to walk or bring the two knees over to the left. We're going to lower the hips to the right. Come down onto the right shoulder. We're all the way over on our backs. Two knees are bent, soles of the feet together. We'll let the two knees drop wide. And then let's take the hands, left hand on the lower belly, right hand on top of the left hand. Close the eyes. If the legs are sore, the hips are sore, you have a couple of options. One is just to simply not do it. You keep the knees pointing up. Second option is to walk the feet apart, drop the two knees in to rest on each other. Or if you want to do that original position, you pad the legs, you support them. So the cushions or whatever are holding the legs do some of the work and the groins get to soften. Either way, I want you to let the attention notice your breath. Very simple. Slide the left leg out, slide the right leg out. We're going to take the hands, move them slightly further away from the body. So you have a bit of space between the arms and the torso, and the feet are a little bit wider than the hips. Now, a lot of what we've been doing through our practice is building strength, opening the body up. And one of the qualities that we want to refine is our capacity to rest deeply. That's so much benefit for us when we actually teach the body how to let go more fully. And that requires us to step out of the sympathetic nervous system, that protective, contractive process or mechanism in the body, that it doesn't really let us rest deeply. So the work we've done is dismantling that, bringing us back to equilibrium or balance. So here, could you take 3 deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth? And with each exhalation, could you drop deeper into the floor? Hold the intention of letting everything go.
sink into the floor.
And then begin to take some deeper breaths. And as you take those deeper breaths, if you feel like stretching, moving fingers, moving toes. And then when you're ready, we're going to bend the knees and roll over to the side. Rolling over to the right side if that's comfortable. And you could use the hand and the arm like a pillow. Get comfortable. Become still. And again, come back to your breath. And just notice how you're doing here. Notice how the internal experience may have shifted since we began our practice. And then when you're ready, bring yourself to sit and get as comfortable as you can in your seat. And if you want to sit up in a chair, feel free to do that. And once you find that seated position, again, we're going to close the eyes and come to our breath. Move the awareness to the breath. And that, as you bring the attention to the breath this time, I want you to bring it right down to the center of the chest. So you're feeling the breath moving through you, but the awareness is resting around the center of the chest. And maybe you feel a sense of the breath moving through you in that space. But whatever sensation, the physicality of that area, whatever you can hone into, feel, notice, listen to. And even though the mind might still be wandering and thoughts moving through you, you just keep bringing the attention back to this space of the heart. So we're going to make a little bit of sound. If you're in a space in which you can't make any sound, make it internally. Sound is Om. Take a deep breath. Om. bring the hands together in front of the heart. Let the attention again gently rest in that place of the heart. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase. So may our practice allow us to meet ourselves, more of ourselves, the hidden parts, the dislocated places, the wounded spaces, the full spaces, the magnificent spaces. May we meet all of ourselves with kindness, with compassion, with grace. May our practice be a gift to ourselves. May it bring us home. To ourselves, to each other. To this day, we bow. Namaste. Blessings. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope the practice is of benefit. I hope it supports you as you move through your day, how you feel, how you perceive. And I look forward to seeing you again. Take care, guys.